Well, a good Sunday to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist John Dawson. Glad you're here checking in on the tropics. We've got a little bit of an unusual situation happening out in the Atlantic. Nothing to get too excited or worried about, but this morning we had Tropical Storm Ernesto, and as of 4 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, strengthening has taken place and it's back to Hurricane Ernesto. So if you were a little confused by the fact that I'm going to be talking about Hurricane Ernesto and you thought, I thought Ernesto was a tropical storm. Well, that is the case. Late on Saturday night, this was downgraded to a tropical storm. And then again, as I mentioned, on Sunday with the 4 p.m. Central Time update, the National Hurricane Center identifying those maximum sustained winds back to 75 miles an hour and possibly even looking for some more strengthening to take place as this continues to sort of ride off into the northeast. I do just want to point out, of course, if you're with me here in Houston, yeah, we're dealing with plenty of heat. It's feeling like August or even hotter. And then I know there's a lot of folks in the Caribbean who like to check in here with us on YouTube, and I'm glad you're here. Thanks for always being consistent, always trying to keep you updated. The good news for my friends in the Caribbean, we are quiet for now. We're not looking for any sort of tropical activity over the next 7 days, really anywhere in the Atlantic basin. And you've had, the Eastern Caribbean at least, had your share of Ernesto when we saw the Virgin Islands, the U.S. and the British Virgin Islands, as well as Puerto Rico. And again, some of those very northeastern islands get impacted by Ernesto and then taking that path up and now away, more or less away from the East Coast. But impacts are still being felt along this East Coast of the U.S. We've got dangerous swells and surf, and rip current is certainly another situation that could be life-threatening. That's the verbiage from the National Weather Service. So I think the main issue here is that our beaches are not just, as we're wrapping up summer, going to be the super safe place that you kind of associate or expect it to be when you head down to any of these beaches along the East Coast. You need to check those lifeguard stands, see what the rip current situations are and that rough surf that is possible. I've even heard of some of the far northeastern beaches that have been closed down for the weekend because of this rough surf. And then Newfoundland going up a little bit up into Canada, going to be seeing in the far North America, we're going to be seeing some rough conditions as Ernesto is going to get close to that landmass as we move through the forecast. So let's kind of get into the forecast just a little bit. Again, this being updated here as we're now moving away from Bermuda. Still some big swells and some rough surf for that island as well, but we are seeing this move away. We've got, again, about 75 mile an hour winds right now with the Sunday afternoon update. We are expecting these to even increase as we go through the next 12 or 24 hours. We'll look for maybe 85 mile an hour winds once we get into Monday early in the morning. And look at this distance, how the speed is increasing. When you see the distance between our icons there representing a point in time, the further they get apart, that means we're moving much faster because we're able to cover ground quite a bit more. So this is Tuesday where we're going to end things here. I'm sorry, Wednesday. Here's where we're looking at it Wednesday. This is Tuesday in the morning. This is Wednesday in the morning. And we should be back down to possibly tropical storm strength once we get into Tuesday. Same thing for Wednesday. So we're right on that line of a hurricane or a tropical storm. Remember, it's strictly based on maximum sustained winds. So the strongest winds that are consistent, not a gust, but a consistent wind, those are what determines what classification that this tropical cyclone gets. Is it a tropical storm with 70 mile an hour winds, or is it a hurricane with 75 mile an hour winds? The reality is that's not going to make that much of a difference to most of us, but that's all it's based on. It's not based on the size of the storm or any of those other threats or factors that go into that tropical cyclone definition. It's just the winds that make a difference on that Saffir-Simpson wind scale once it gets into a hurricane, and again, how it's defined on what type of tropical cyclone zone it is. So a quick review or reminder here when we look at tropical history, where we see our activity really spiking up once we get into August. So we're just now ramping it up. We're expecting to continue to see quite a bit of activity as we're rolling through here. Ernesto did make it up to Category 2 strength. We'll continue to refer to it in the history books as a hurricane, but as we know, it could and is expected to become a tropical storm again within another 24 hours, even though it might even have a little bit more strengthening. So as we sort of get to the peak of August or the middle of August and we're getting towards the end of the month, we're still looking for this area to be the primary area for formation to take place as far as tropical cyclones are concerned. Typically, those storms roll off an African coast and they don't have the organization or the size or the strength until they continue to move east and start approaching the Caribbean. Other spots that are possible, you'll notice along the east coast as well. That's somewhere where we could see one, especially this time of year. We have those very weak fronts that'll sort of come off of the coast, and that'll help kind of give a boundary just enough to get a little bit more extra rotation going and kind of bring everything together and organize to create that closed low pressure that's at the surface. That's sometimes what we have happening here. So it is likely that we could see something occurring along the east coast. And then for us here in the Gulf of Mexico, possibly, certainly something could form, and we've seen that in late August and into September. But our prime area, this is where we're continuing to kind of keep an eye on things. Here's those disturbed weather that sort of comes in and rolls across from the east to the west. But there's just not anything right now that we're looking at forming. So I talked about everybody over in the Caribbean. Glad you're here, glad you're checking in. But things are looking good at this point as far as that goes. No matter where you are, if you're in the U.S., if you're in the Caribbean, make sure that you are aware of this very active hurricane season that we find ourselves in and that you have made some plans. Or if you haven't checked your plans lately, make sure they're updated. I've got a lot of great resources on my YouTube channel. If you're already on YouTube and you're on the Fox 26 channel, just go to that search bar up at the top for YouTube and search Meteorologist John Dawson. Doing that will find my page, and that's where everything is very well organized on a playlist of all my hurricane gear tests. And they're just there to help give you ideas. Certainly, you could look at the product, decide if it's something that you want to buy, but that's not really why we're doing the hurricane gear test, to buy or not buy a product. I want you to think about your needs and how this product kind of spurs on that discussion of maybe getting your preparations ready for you and your dependents. So here are just a few of those ideas. Again, speaking of dependents, make sure you've got some supplies for your pets. Documents, always a good idea to have some hard copies, but also get a digital version of whatever those hard copies are. Maybe it's as simple as taking a picture with your phone, or maybe you're actually getting a digital file, a PDF made or something, and you're getting that uploaded to the cloud somewhere for safety. And of course, flashlights, those are always something that you want to make sure that you're ready for. And this week's Hurricane Gear Test, the one that's going to begin airing tomorrow, is going to deal with food. Emergency food is one of those things that's a little tricky to deal with because we don't really want to buy it because we don't really want to eat it. It means that we're eating it, that there's some kind of an emergency happening, right? So it's a little tricky to know exactly what to do on that, and I have a little bit of a different resource for you offering. So again, that comes out this week. It's not out yet, but we're talking about food this week on the Hurricane Gear Test. Thanks for checking in with me here on a Sunday afternoon. As always, every day of hurricane season, we're here keeping you updated on the tropics. Anything happening, we'll be talking about it. So I'll look for you again tomorrow afternoon.